The Beyl is a 2023 film. This is directed and written by Beyl, and we have a cast including Sean O'Brien and Rebekah Kennedy. And what I will say about this is that, on the one hand, I don't know whether I think it's an okay film or a pretty poor film. But on the other hand, I've not stopped thinking about this since I watched it. I watched it last night. Usually, just for context, with films, I will watch them and then immediately review them. But the films that I watch at the very end of the day, i.e. maybe the last hour before I go to bed, I tend to review them the following day because by that point I'm pretty tired and I want to be a little bit sharper when I discuss them. And this is a film that I watched late last night. And since then, I haven't stopped thinking about it, largely because I still can't make up my mind. So regardless of whether I think it's a good film or a bad film or anything else, the fact that it's stuck with me and I still think about it is in itself a very good thing. This is about an individual who opens their home to an Amish person. This Amish girl is running away from something. She's clearly in some kind of danger. And that's what drew me to it, because I love films about the Amish. But I will say, she didn't need to be Amish. She could have just been any random person. If you're looking for a film about the Amish, this isn't that film. She did not need to be Amish. But at the same time, no problems with the character, perfectly likeable, interesting enough character. And then I don't want to go into too much detail for a couple of reasons. One, the film is only an hour and 10 minutes. And two, it takes about 20-25 minutes for the main part of the narrative to actually begin. So we only have about 40 minutes of story. The other reason I don't want to give anything away is because it's unclear what's happening for the bulk of the film. And I obviously don't want to spoil what happens towards the end. But that's the bit that I don't know if I like or not. So it's kind of hard to discuss it without spoiling it. But I might at the end give a spoiler warning and go into more detail. But once the narrative began, when we first meet Hannah, the Amish girl, and she asks Douglas for help and he brings her into his house and cares for her, that initial moment was very good. And then it seemed to get a bit repetitive. That's not the right word, but again, I can't really explain it without spoiling it. And then I started to think, this just seems a bit weird. It feels very disjointed. I don't really understand what's happening with the timeline here. And then towards the end, it started to make a bit more sense. So I think if they didn't have that other encounter, it would have made more sense. And I will with a spoiler warning at the end discuss that actually, because I think that doesn't make a lot of sense with what I'm saying. But the point there is that I don't like the narrative structure. I don't think it works very well. The other thing I absolutely hate and don't think was necessary is the green lighting. The film is washed with this ugly green lighting. I really hate it. I thought it was horrendous to look at, and I don't think it served a purpose. Maybe if you're reading the film differently than I am, you might think the lighting serves a purpose, but it almost seemed like a gimmick. It almost seems like they knew the film didn't have enough substance to the narrative itself, so they needed to add in something else to increase the mystery. And obviously the green lighting is quite mysterious. So that part of it didn't work for me. I did maybe have a theory about it, which I will discuss at the end. This is something that I thought of at some point, kind of during the night while I was thinking about this. And I thought maybe that's what they're getting at. There are a lot of questions, and I think a lot of it is up to the viewer to come to their own conclusions. And unfortunately for me, I don't tend to like that experience. I want the storyteller to tell me the story. I don't want to fill in the blanks myself. So I didn't love that experience either. But in general, it was okay, I think. I don't know. As I said, the fact that it's still with me and the fact that I'm still thinking about it is in itself a good thing. Do I recommend it? Not if you're looking for a story about the Amish. Absolutely not. If you're looking for a confusing but definitely thought-provoking experience, maybe. If you like films that are unclear in their intentions and where you actually get to think more about it rather than having the storyteller tell you the story, you might like it. There's certainly an audience for that in general, but it does seem very, very underdeveloped. And even if I liked stories where I had more questions than answers, I still don't think the narrative structure worked well. So proceed with caution. If you're curious, maybe check it out. I will now go into some spoiler details. So big spoilers for pretty much everything that happens in the film at this point. So nothing happens for about 20 minutes. The very, very beginning is quite interesting, but then for about 20-25 minutes, nothing happens. And then finally, and as I said, big spoilers, Douglas meets Hannah. She's clearly in distress. There's clearly a problem, and he helps her. And then he finds her outside, and she doesn't know who he is. And it's like she's come to the house again for the first time. But there are now no bruises on her, and maybe I missed something, but I don't understand what the point was or what they were getting at there. And had that not happened, had the story just continued from Hannah first meeting Douglas to ultimately what happens at the end of the film, then actually it might have made a bit more sense and it might have been a stronger story. And I will tell you why, because I will tell you ultimately what happens at the end of the film, and also why I think the green lighting might help represent that, even though it's still really ugly. So Hannah, in the second part, when she's back to the house and there's now a telephone, and I don't really know what any of that's representing. Is it supposed to be what the house was like back in the day? I'm not too sure, but Hannah is not from this current timeline. She's actually from the past, and Douglas met her when he was younger, and she needed help, and she tried to get into his car, and he drove away without helping her. I guess he was spooked by the moment, and he fled without helping her, and that's weighed on his conscience, and this is his chance to help her again. And I think that would have been sweet if Douglas, the age he is now, had been able to help her now, but instead she is terrified of him, which maybe is fitting since he didn't help her and he therefore was a source of her pain. And she runs and she gets into the car with his younger self. So his younger self was therefore ultimately able to help her. Those last few scenes I thought, well, the last scene when they're driving away, I thought was ridiculous and very poorly executed. But I can kind of see what they're getting at with that message of redemption there. But there are so many things in the narrative that just don't make sense. And they have so many questions, or I have so many questions about those things, that it's just very, very poorly executed. So I think the idea is nice about somebody who did something in their past and now they're getting a chance to fix it. And purely my opinion is that the green lighting represents limbo. He's suffering from heart problems, chest problems, as we see towards the end of the film, and he's in a lot of pain. Clearly his hand is on his chest. I wonder if maybe he had died because of this and he's now in limbo, and before he can progress further to heaven or wherever he's going, he has to rectify this problem, and he's kind of getting a second chance to do that, even though in my religious belief that's not how limbo works. But that's kind of my reading of it. The green light did represent this more this ethereal plane, and that's the only reason I can see we have this green lighting. Otherwise I can't find a reason for it. Maybe there is no reason for it. Maybe, as I said, they realised the narrative wasn't that good, so they needed to throw in another gimmick to give the viewer something else to contemplate. I don't know. As a story of redemption, it could have worked. I think on paper it might have been a stronger story. The execution of the narrative is not very good at all. It's very underdeveloped. The performances were very good. Credit where it's due, the performances are very strong. The camera work is good, but the lighting is disgusting. It could have been amazing, but I don't think it was very well handled. But as I said, if I've been thinking about this for the last, I don't know, not 24 hours, but certainly a good chunk of time, then that can't be a bad thing. So if you're curious, check it out. I'd love to know what you think of it. I have no idea if my reading of the film is the intended reading of the film. I have thought a lot about it, and that's kind of my conclusion. So a thought-provoking film, not a very entertaining film, a brilliant concept, very poorly executed. But if you're curious, largely because I'm selfish and want to know what other people think of it, maybe check it out. If you're looking for an entertaining film where you're not left with a lot of confusion, obviously don't watch it. But if you're curious, take a look, let me know what you think. If nothing else, I think The Veil is one that will stay with me for quite some time.